Hello and welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for Scorpio. I'm Julia Mijas.
And I'm Jamie Kale Miller. Well, hey, Scorpio. I've got a lot to tell you about relationships and finance this month. Juno is direct and fast, which is great news for all of us who like to be in relationships. She is, of course, the relationship goddess to do with marriage, particularly in committed partnerships, even business ones. So when Juno is direct, we can have those relationships proceed along in an untangled, fast-moving way. She's also traveling through your 11th house and moving speedily along it. Which is great because this is a very social house and does suggest that you should be able to do some great business networking and also placing yourself in social contexts where you can meet people if you're in a dating mode. Mars is going to come into a trine with that Juno July 1st through 7th. So right away here in the first week of the month, you're going to have access to some assertion. So if your work is based on networking, based on relationship building, like for example, if you're a real estate agent or in sales in any way, then this first week of the month is going to be a time when you find that you're really a go-getter and you're ready to go out and initiate those conversations. And that if you're in a dating mode, this is a really good time to get out there because you're going to find that you're ready to do more than just respond to other people's advances. You'll be ready to make some advances of your own. Mars is traveling along the seventh house until July 20th. And that's actually not the best of news because you can find that Mars brings his characteristic sassiness and pushiness to the domain of relationships, which is your seventh house, and that you might be a little bit too pushy, a little too dominating, a little bit too assertive in your relationships during this first 2/3 of the month. So watch out for that. But but there is a moment coming later in the month when something very interesting could happen. And this is because Uranus is traveling along your seventh house in a long-term way. Uranus is traveling your seventh house for about 7 years, bringing you into this, longish term era, 7 years of where you're kind of willing to date off type. You're sort of viewing relationship as an experimental region where you're kind of wanting to try stuff. And when Mars comes into conjunction with Uranus during the middle of the month, July 11th to 17th, you might find yourself, out in a social situation where you meet somebody who's not your usual fare, and you're willing to make the first move. So that could bring you into an interesting, unusual partnership with a quirky person who could be a disruptor in the best possible way in your life. Mars then moves on into the eighth house on July 20th and will be in your eighth house into next month. And this is a great place for Mars because of all of the force of will that you get when Mars is traveling through your eighth house. You become pretty unstoppable, pretty forceful, and pretty persistent. And that's where I want to turn this conversation to finance because that's going to stand you in really good stead. But I'm going to come back to it in a minute because I want to tell you about how the early part of the month is around finance because there's some interesting stuff happening there. As the month begins, Jupiter, which is the ruler of your second house, your house of money, it's ruled by Jupiter, which means that you have a naturally positive, hopeful, and optimistic disposition towards money in the first place. But Jupiter is now in the eighth house, traveling through the eighth house for the rest of the year, having just moved in here last month. Now, this is a house of monies that you've invested or debt that you've accumulated. And there is no better time in a 12-year period than Jupiter traveling your eighth house for you to cut down on that debt, for you to pay that debt back aggressively, for you to bring that native hope and optimism that you have about bringing money into your life and apply that to burning through some debt that you've accumulated that really has you worrying and staying up at night. So this is a good year for that, full stop. And Ceres is presently retrograde, having gone retrograde quite recently, last month, and a couple of months ago. And Ceres is taking us all on an inward journey, a financial journey to figure out what is, where are the messes financially and how can they be cleaned up? And what aspects of our past financial history do we need to look at and clean up? So Ceres is on this retrograde journey already as the month begins. And then we come to something that I like to call Financial Crisis Day. That happens when the sun comes into opposition with Ceres. And it's like the sun brings the light of consciousness. It shines the light of attention like a spotlight on your finances. So if there have been mysteries or confusion or messes, this is where you get to see them in sharp relief. And that can actually be helpful. It's not generally comfortable, which is why we call it Financial Crisis Day, but it doesn't have to actually be a crisis if you handle it in the right way. Now, on this particular occasion, though, it's a little bit different because the sun will be with the moon in a new moon on Financial Crisis Day. And a new moon is usually a time of new beginnings. That new moon happening in your ninth house, it's going to be characterized by a lot of feelings of uplifting feelings of hope and possibility, new horizons, new philosophies, new beliefs. And so this is an opportunity to form and I would say cement some new emotional beliefs about money that can help carry you forward and untangle some of the messes of the past. And then now I'm going to come back to that Mars that I mentioned. Mars is entering that 8th house, July 20th. We'll be there into next month. And this is a really great time to then really begin to power through your debt. And remember, Jupiter is here already, right? So Jupiter is bringing you a lot of hope that you could cut down on your debt. And Mars will now add the determination to do so and the follow through as well. Julia, what's up with career for the Scorpios out there this month?
Well, Scorpio, lots of career activity for you this month. We've got Mercury entering your 10th house early on, and the 10th house is a career house. So with Mercury in this house, this is a time where you're really preoccupied by your job. It can be great for updating your resume because Mercury rules writing. It's great for public speaking. It's great for buying and selling because that's what Mercury represents if you do any of that, or teaching if you do any of that on your job. So any Mercury related pursuit right now that you do for work will really be benefited by this transit. Then on July 25th, Mercury enters your 11th house. This is a social house and this is a very social planet. So you can use your connections in your career. You can find ways to network better, maybe reach out to old clients of yours, old contacts of yours, and really just kind of bring a social focus into the career realm. And that might help you out quite a bit. Venus, the planet of luck and beauty, enters your 10th house on July 11th. So that means you'll be getting along very well with the people you work with. It's a great time to ask for a raise or some favor from your boss who's ruled by the 10th house. And if you do anything Venus related, anything aesthetic for work, or if you just want to do, come off more sort of charming, better looking in any type of public, if you're in the public eye at all, this can really benefit the transit too. Now, the sun rules your 10th house and enters your 10th house on July 22nd. So big focus of your drive, your consciousness going into what you do and how you would like to expand your reputation in the eyes of others this month. And Chiron, who is in your 6th house of work, will station retrograde at the end of the month, meaning that there might be some old wounds that are coming up around now having to do with the workplace, maybe stuff from your own childhood. But while these wounds come up, this is also a good time to address them.
Find our site at pandoraastrology.com to get a reading with one of us, and find us on Patreon for workshops and classes. And we'll see you around the cosmos.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.